Oh my. Critic reviews on review aggregator sites can't be trusted. Oh, that's a shock and a surprise right there, as a interesting little expose here has revealed that at least one company by the name of Bunker 15 has allegedly been paying reviewers $50 or more for their reviews. We're just going to give you a little bit of a sponsorship to have a review, of course. Oh, by the way, do you post negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes? Because that might decide whether or not you get your $50. Honestly, the most shocking part of this is how cheap these reviewers are. $50? Really? Is that all it takes for you to watch a shitty movie and go, yeah, no, it's actually pretty great? Hell, even writing the review is going to take some time. I feel as if you're going to be working for minimum wage at that point, but... oh well. See, okay. This whole thing I find to be rather amusing, so... The decomposition of Rotten Tomatoes, the most overrated metric in movies, is erratic, reductive, and easily hacked, and yet has Hollywood in its grip. So this article is deeply anti-Rotten Tomatoes as a review score site, and it makes a few interesting arguments, like, for example, the massive increase in reviewers. We're not going to read the whole thing because it is rather lengthy and goes into a fair bit of detail, but one of its main critiques is that Rotten Tomatoes and, reviewing, critiquing in general back in good old days was only done by a handful of people that were highly regarded within the culture of it, shall we say. The movie critic was a guy who wrote for a certain outlet, and that was what he did. He was a famous lad. The music critics as well, these were big names, semi-popular celebrities de facto. Whereas today, any bumfuck nobody with a laptop and a computer and an internet connection was what I was going for, can technically be a reviewer. Now, to become an official critic, you do need to be listed on Rotten Tomatoes' own little list, but apparently that has also grown drastically over the years, so presumably Rotten Tomatoes themselves have lowered the standards quite significantly as the number of reviewers and critics also in turn increase. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the critic scores in the current year, either you haven't been paying attention or you are I would say terminally naive. Surely you must fall for some pretty damn basic scam at some point if you actually believe reviewers today. We're talking the ideas of purchasing the limited Statue of Liberty level stuff here, but details. Though they do also have an interesting point in that this is becoming one of the only metrics that people use, of course, because, again, when there is 3, 4, 5,000 reviewers, well, you're not going to read all of them. God, you're not even going to read a fraction of them. At which point, it's a hell of a lot easier to go into a review score site and go okay, that one is so-and-so many points, that one is so-and-so many points, and Rotten Tomatoes makes it even easier by going, is the tomato red or is the tomato green? And that's it. And that's how you make your quote-unquote informed decision. Interestingly enough, we have so much information today that making an informed decision can be more difficult than ever, as you practically need to immerse yourself into whatever it is you're into to a pretty substantial depth to figure out the reasons and the layers of something, like the recent Star Wars show, for example, Ahsoka. It's de facto season 5 of a different show, a kids animated show, and it draws upon inspiration from a book series that you may never have heard of. Where is this taking place? Well, it's in the New Republic. What the hell is that? Is that the thing that blew up in the Disney War movies? Yeah. Are those canon? Is this happening before or after? Etc. Entertainment has ironically gotten rather convoluted, and the more information is available, the more convoluted it might end up becoming, which means that if the rotten or fresh thing is the only thing that matters, well, it will have an enormous impact on the actual, movie-going public, if that is the metric. Now, interestingly enough, they do have a point further down here somewhere, where they point out that being rated fresh on Rotten Tomatoes doesn't necessarily guarantee financial success in any way, shape, or form. Probably in large part due to the fact that people look at both the critic and the normal people scores. And by and large, again, people have learned that the critics speak from their asses far more frequently than they speak from their mouths or minds. And they don't really cover that. So would you imagine that a lot of movies that get very positive critic receptions but get panned by the general audience will get, well, the general audience to be a hell of a lot less interested in actually watching them. But on the flip side, we also know for absolutely certain that these sites do influence the success or alternatively the failure of a given product. If they didn't, companies wouldn't put this much effort into manipulating them, like The Rings of Power, for example, where Amazon decided to use its pull over its own site, of course, IMDb, to pull all of the reviews and pause them for a week, and then only really letting back in the positive ones before eventually, like a week or two later, allowing both positive and negatives to be searched for. They wouldn't do that, especially not in such an obvious goddamn way, unless they knew that a lot of normies would visit the site and only look at the number. Now, personally, I actually do think that the number of normies, at least in that way, is decreasing rather rapidly. More and more people are awakening, that's more correctly, to the intricacies of the, well, what we often refer to as the culture war, you could say. When they go to see a Star Wars movie, or they go to see a television show or a game, etc., they will almost inherently look for a few of the things they've been told to look for. The word woke is now being used as a general pejorative against, well, anything that can kind of sort of fit in, and the reaction to it is becoming more and more vehement. The recent outcry around Starfield, for example, I think is a brilliant example of that. Is Starfield woke? In many ways, yes, but it's not overtly so. There are girl bosses everywhere to the point where practically the entire pirate faction is made of nothing but girl bosses, and by and large a woman stands ready to replace the male at the drop of a hat should he be assassinated or removed. The characters themselves are, well, rather one-dimensional, as you've got the strong female character repeated ad infinitum, and it is an extraordinarily diverse game. God help me. Whoever programmed the random NPC thing, he certainly had ideas in mind, shall we say. But is it overtly woke, as in does it push its political ideology obviously in its messaging, in its words, etc.? Not necessarily, not obviously, not overwhelmingly, at least not as far as I could see, perhaps later on, but yet the simple they-them pronoun selector kicked off a whole shitstorm. Now, here's the thing. I don't care if the pronouns in the video game are he, him, she, her, they, them, or your majesty. I don't give a shit, frankly. It has become a common thing in video games, and it has been to an extent for quite some time. What I do care about is the political narrative behind it. See, a lot of people who got pissed off over the Starfield thing, for example, didn't really seem to mind it in Baldur's Gate, where you have like body types, or in Diablo, or in Harry Potter, but it might simply have been the straw that finally broke the camel's back. Yet another example of this, because every time you see it, you know why it's there. It's not because of the 2% of people who might genuinely feel comfortable selecting the they-them pronouns, it's because of the rest of people who go, yes, abide by our rules and regulations, or we will destroy you. There was also, there have been reports, I have been hesitant to do a video on this, which is why I'm kind of talking about it here instead, of the Nexus mod, claiming that they will remove all mods that try to remove the pronouns. Now, that sounds reasonable, because Nexus Mod decided to do that de facto in the Spider-Man game, where they removed the, the mod that replaced all of the pride flags with the American flag, I think, but didn't remove the mod that replaced all of the American flags with the pride flags. So we know Nexus Mod has a very clear agenda. However, whilst it sounds reasonable, like something they would do, I have been unable to actually discover the source of these rumors beyond Steam posts. And you can kind of see people working themselves into a bit of a rabid frenzy over this, because again, woke has become so thoroughly negative, so universally loathed and hated, that the mere suggestion of it, the mention of it, causes all of the little frogs that have been boiling in the pot now for so very, very, very long to finally start feeling the heat and start jumping out. You can kind of see the same in the form of something like Rotten Tomatoes. Again, I know I've wandered off on a little bit of a side tangent here, but It is a general indicator of where the public is going and their influence in things. The critic scores, in my opinion, are probably irrelevant because most people don't trust them anymore. Less and less every day, so the point where you can bribe them is frankly almost irrelevant already, particularly as this relates primarily to medium-sized indies and tiny movies, etc. I don't actually think this is a particularly large revelation, because frankly, when the companies really want to suppress something, they'll do like Amazon and do it overtly. Or when the Miss Marvel movie, for example, was getting review bombed, they simply just yeeted those. When the companies really want to screw you over, they ain't gotta pay no internet nobody $50 to do it, they'll just do it. And up until now, we've simply been willing to go along with it. The same with the pronouns thing. It's accepted as a normal thing because, well, it has become it. But eventually, because you know why it is there, the beverage overfloweth. And that again is the real problem. I don't care about the pronouns. I care about the political agenda that placed them there in the video game. Rotten Tomatoes. A rotten site. Small surprise indeed. But hey, it is yet another revelation that tells us once more, finally, loud and clear, don't trust professional critics. They are an outdated, dying breed that should probably have wandered off this professional life, mind you, YouTube, you know. Professional existence about probably a good decade ago, frankly, and be replaced by a larger and fresher, no pun intended, group of independent reviewers that you can keep a bit more of a close track on. Because in reality, what is far better than 3,500 reviewers you don't know? Well, it's the one reviewer you do, and you've built a relationship with, and that you feel you can trust, because they're unlikely to screw you over or outright lie to you. At least, that's the ideal, until they too realize that there's a tasty $50 to be had. Again, some people are very cheap. You may rest assured that if I lie to you, I'll charge more than $50. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and do have a good day.